Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi Shabbos, Daf Ayin Vav, on Daf Ayin Hey on Beis, the last line. Says the Gemara, going back to the Mishnah, V'chol she'enei kosher latzniya, the Mishnah told us that if there's something that has significance on two accounts, an item is something which somebody cares for, to store away, latzniya, it is something of chashivas. So the type is something which has significance. The amount is also that type of amount, the quantity which somebody attributes chashivas, significance to. If a chayfetz possesses those two qualities, then indeed if he carries it out into Shus Ram on Shabbos, he's chayav. But if it lacks any of those qualifications, then he's pater. The Mishnah concluded that if something does not have that quality, it is not kosh latzniya, it's not something which somebody would care for to store away on account of either its type, its quality, or on account of its size. There's not enough there to have chashivas, to have significance. So if it's missing one of those qualifications, he is pater if he should carry that on Shabbos. It's not something chashuv to be considered a chayfetz for hitzah, for the malach of carrying. However, if there's perhaps an individual who should care for this item, he personally attributes chashivas to it for whatever reason. So in that case, he attributes chashivas, significance, to an item which generally lacks significance. Or he attributes significance. He cares for an item which generally is something chashuv, but it's very small in size, and generally speaking, people would not attribute any significance to such a small item. But he personally likes it, took a liking to it, it is dear to him. In that case, he will have a different halacha than everybody else. If he personally should carry out this item in Shus Ram on Shabbos, he is chayav, because to him it is chashuv, to him it is dear. But everybody else will be pater. Continues the Gemara up on Ayin Vav and Aleph on the first line. Amar Rabbi Elazar, ha deloi k'Reb Shimon ben Elazar. The halacha stated in our Mishnah that only this particular person who cares for this item, he attributes significance to it, and he will be chayav when he is mitzi this item from Shasayach Shasarabim. But everybody else who doesn't really care for it on account of its type or its size is pater. This does not concur with the shita of Rav Shimon Elazar. The Sanyo Klal Amar Rav Shimon Elazar. Rav Shimon Elazar stated a rule: Kol she'enei kosh latzniya. If this item is not suitable, fit for storing, it's insignificant, or ve'ei matznin kamoi, or perhaps it's the right type of item, but it's too small in size, and nobody really cares for it, nobody would store it. But that's the general population. And to this particular person, this specific fellow, it was dear to him, he cared for it, and he stored it, he put it in storage. It means he cared for it. In that case, the item itself attains chashivas. It is granted chashivas, significance, not only for this person, it gets a din of chashivas for everybody else as well. And then, result after this person was matzniya, the item, gave it chashivas, somebody else went ahead and carried it in Shus Rabim. The second fellow will become chayav b'machshava shel zeh. He became chayav, became liable as a result of the machshava, of the intention, the plan of the first person. So Ruvain designated it. Shimon becomes chayav by carrying it out, even though Tim personally has no significance. But since this object has already acquired chashivas as a result of the significance attributed to it by Ruvain, it has a din of a chayfetz chashiv, and anybody that should carry it out is chayiv. So in summary, we have a machlekes. In the case where we have something which is not really chashiv to the general population, but to Reuven, for instance, it is chashiv. Our Mishnah tells us that only Reuven is chayiv, but everybody else is pater for hitzah. It's not considered to be chashiv. Reb Shimon Elazar maintains that just as it becomes chashiv for Reuven, it gets chashivas. It gets significance and important for everybody else as well. And therefore, if everybody else would carry it out, they're chayiv. Continues the Mishnah. The Mishnah will give us a list of various types of items. For instance, animal feed. What is the shear, the amount, the measure which is required for the chiyuv havitzah, that if one would carry out that measure, he's chayiv. Says the Mishnah, Hamoiti teven, if one carries teven, unprocessed straw, kimaloi pi para. Since this is designated for cow feet, so what is the shear, the proper amount, to give it chashiva, significance, to be considered umatzniin kamayu, that's the terminology we had in the previous Mishnah, the amount which one would care for, to store, and has chashivas, kimaloi pi para. Kimaloi, to fill the mouth of a part of a cow. So the mouthful of a cow. Otza, this is a different form of straw. Kimaloi pi gamal, since it's designated, it's intended for camel feed. So we follow the size of a camel's mouth. Kimloi, in order to fill pi gamal, the mouth of a camel. Amir is unprocessed straw. Kimaloi pi tola, the mouthful of a lamb. Asavim, grass. Kimloi pigdi, the amount to fill the mouth of a goat. Ale shum, shum is garlic, so garlic leaves. Vale bitzolim, onion leaves. Lachem, it depends if it's lachem, if it's fresh and edible for a person. In that case, it has the din of kigergeris, the shear of the measure of a dried fig, which is the shear for the malachis regarding foodstuffs. So here, if it's suitable for a machal adam, for human consumption, it has a shear of machal adam, which is gergeris. Yiveshim, if they're dried leaves, in that case, it's not fit for the adam, for the person. We follow a different shear, an animal feed shear. Kimloi pigdi, much to fill the mouth of a goat. Now we have various objects with various shiurim. Can we be metzaref one with the other? Suppose he only has half the amount of the teven. Could you go add some of the atza to complete the shear? Says the Mishnah, no. Ve'ein mitzarfen zemze. All these types of items who possess different shiurim, different measures, they can't combine with each other. They can't complete each other because they each have different halachis. Because all these various items who have different shiurim, they're not alike in their measures and their shiurim, therefore they can't combine with each other. Continues the Gemara, my atza. What exactly is the definition of the word atza? It is the straw of forms of beans, which apparently is suitable for camel feed. Continues the Gemara. What's going to be in the following scenario? Ki also Rav Dimi came. Omar, he said as follows: Ha'moitzi teven, if one should carry out teven, the unprocessed straw, which is destined for cow feed. So he took out the right amount, kumloi pi para, the mouthful of a cow, but his his intention was to feed it not to the cow, but rather to the gamal, to the camel. So the purpose, the function of the teven generally is to feed a cow. He decided he wants to use it for a gamal. Now, the mouth of a gamal is larger, is greater than the mouth of a cow. So in this case, he only took out the amount suitable for a pur, not for a cow. The question is, do we follow the cow size or do we follow the camel size? Do we look at the actual substance, which is primarily designated for cow feed, and therefore, as the Mishnah told us, what is the shear of the teven to be chayiv? Kumloi pi para. So in this case, that he carried out this right amount, the kumloi pi para, the cow, the mouthful of a cow, do we say it's sufficient, and therefore he's chayiv? It's considered to be matzni and kamayu. Or do we say, well, this individual intends on using it for the camel. He needs much more. Therefore, he's not chayiv until he has enough for the camel. We have machlekes. Rav Yochanan Amar chayiv. He's chayiv. Even if he only took out the mouthful of a cow. Rav Shlokish Amar Shimon Lakish Amar potter. He's potter. Why? Since he intends on using it for the gamal, and this amount is not enough, not sufficient for the gamal, therefore he's potter. So this was the first version of the machlekes. Rabbi Yochanan says chayav. We follow the substance. Rabbi Shimon Lakish Amar potter. We follow the intended purpose. But Urta, says the Gemara, at night, in the evening, Rabbi Yochanan indeed maintained that he's chayiv. Litzafra hadarbe. In the morning, he changed his mind. He said, in this case he would be potter. Why? Because he plans on feeding it to the camel. It's not sufficient for the camel, it's not enough. Therefore, it's not significant enough in his potter. Amar Rav Yosef, Shaper Avad, the Hadar. Rav Yosef says and responds to the story, he said, it's a good thing that he changed his mind. Shaper Avad, he did well. The Hadar, that he reverted. Because it's not suitable, there's not enough there, there's not enough quantity for the Gamal. And therefore, it's good that Rav Yechon changed his mind. The Svara says, the Svara dictates, logic dictates that he's potter. Abaye responds to Rav Yosef, just the opposite. Adrab, just the opposite. It's logical to say, as he had initially said, that he's chayiv. Rav Yechon initially maintained that he's chayiv. The chazi lepara. It's suitable for the para, meaning that this teven, which is cow feed, is chazi. There's enough there for the para. Therefore, even though he intends on feeding it to the gamal, he's still chayiv, because just because he intends on giving it to a gamal, it doesn't change the halacha. If it's considered to be chashiv ashir chashiv, since it has sufficient, enough there to feed the cow, it doesn't change matters just because he intends on feeding it to the gamal, which needs more. So Abaye challenges. Abaye says it can't be that Abaye disagreed with the second version that suggested Rav Yochanan exempted him. Rav Yochanan said he's potter. Abaye says no. It's actually more logical to say as the initial version of things, the Rav Yochanan indeed said chayiv. Why? Because at the end of the day, ultimately, this cow feed is enough to feed the cow. Ella, says the Gemara, a different version of the machlekes. Ella ki asa Rabin. Omar ha-moitzi teven. This is the correct version of the machlekes. Ha-moitzi teven kim lo pipara legamal. If he is moitzi teven, the amount to fill the pipara, the mouthful of a para, legamal. And even though he intended on feeding it to the gamal, which requires more, because the gamal's mouth is larger, everybody would agree that he's chayiv. Why? Because apparently he's following the svara of Abaye, who says, well, the chazi lepara. Since it's cow feed and there's enough yet to feed the cow, why would you exempt him? Just because he intends on feeding it to the gamal? It doesn't change the chashivas of the chayfetz, the din of the object. Everybody agrees, Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish agree that he's chayiv. Ki pligi, when and then is there a disagreement between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish? In the following case only. B'moitzi atza, if one carries the atza, which is the teven of the kitnis, which is the straw of the beans, which is apparently suitable primarily for the gamal, for the cow, and not really for the para. So in that case, the Mishnah told us, what is the shear of the atza? We need the mouthful of a camel, which is larger than the mouthful of a cow. In this case, we'll have a machlekes. Ki pligi b'moitzi atza. When he carries out atza, which is camel feed, kim leipi para la para. But this fellow decided to feed it to his para, to his cow, and he carried out a mouthful of a para. So which this amount, this quantity is less. Is a lesser amount than the mloy of the pigamol. The question is, does it change matters? Since he's intending on giving it to the para, to feeding it to the cow, do we say, well, ordinarily speaking, you require much more because it's designated as camel feed. But in a situation where he intends on feeding it to the para, perhaps we're going to be machmer, we're going to be stringent now and say, since this person intends on feeding it to the para, which requires less, we follow his intentions, we follow his plans, and that is what determines the quantity required. And indeed, the names, the shittas, the opinions, were actually switched around. Rav Yochanan is the one who says potter. Rish Lakish amar chayiv. Rabbi Yochanan amar potter, says the Gemara, why? Achila al yidei atchak lo yishma achila. Ideally, this is meant to be fed to a camel, not to a cow. It's considered to be achila al yidei atchak. Atchak means as a necessity. It's not something which he prefers, it's not something which the cow really likes, it's not something which is really meant to be fed to a cow. It's considered to be achila de'etchak. The question is, do we regard it as an achila, and therefore we measure the feed, the atzah that's going to be fed to the cow according to the measurement of the mouthful of the cow, since right now it's being fed to the cow? Or do we say no? It's not really. It can't really determine. The determining factor is not the cow's mouth, since it's not really regarded as the proper feeding, the proper feed, the achila of the cow, and therefore we can't change the halacha. The halacha is that atzah, which is meant to be fed to a cow, contains the shear of a camel's mouth and not a cow's mouth. Then Rabbi Yechon says he's potter, and only way he's chayiv if he carries out the right amount intended for a camel. So once again, according to Rabbi Yechanan, we don't follow this person's plan, this person's intention, even though he plans on giving it to the parah, and that was the kavanah of his eitzah. It doesn't change the shear of the chayfetz of this object. It is camel feed, and therefore has a shear of the mouthful of a camel. Until that point, he's not chayiv. Rish Lakish Amar chayiv. Rish Lakish says he's chayiv in this case. Why? Since he plans on feeding it to the parah, to the cow, even though it's not ideal for him, it's achila al yedei hatchak. It's eating out of necessity. Shmo achila. It is regarded as a din achila, and therefore the halacha changes. The measure, the shear, the amount changes. Since he's feeding it to the cow, even though it's not ideal for the cow, since he's feeding it to the cow, the amount, the measure required of this atzah is merely the mouthful of a cow. So in summary, if we have cow feed, teven, which requires a smaller amount in order to fill the mouth of a cow, and he intended on feeding it to a gamal, which requires more, all will agree that he's chayav, even though the gamal requires more, and this is not sufficient for the gamal. It doesn't change the halacha, the status of this item, which is generally regarded as cow feed, and therefore the smaller amount to fill the mouth of a cow is sufficient. So his kavana, his intention, his plan, his purpose, in this case, doesn't change things. It's not going to apply leniency, a kula, and change the shear. What about in the reverse, to apply a chumrah, a stringency? If generally speaking this material is intended for a camel, but this fellow decides to feed it to his cow, it's achila al de'atchak, out of necessity. Do we say, well, the cow requires less, and therefore the shear goes down, becomes reduced, and even with a smaller amount suitable for the cow, that will be sufficient to be regarded as a chayvetz chashiv, the right amount of chashivas, and he'll be chayiv? Rabbi Yechon says, no, he's potter. It's achila de'atchak. It's not regarded as an achila. It's out of necessity. It doesn't change the status of the item. We don't apply stringency until he actually has the amount suitable for the camel. He's potter. Rish Lakish says, no. Achila de'atchak is shma achila. We regard it as an achila, even though he's feeding it to the cow out of necessity. It's not really suitable for the cow. Nevertheless, it's regarded as an achila, and therefore it changes the halacha. He only needs the amount, the shear, the measure required to fill the mouth of a cow. And once he has that amount, he's chayiv. Now Tosfos points out an apparent contradiction between our Gemara, which maintains that according to Rabbi Yechanan, achila al yedei atchak is not regarded as an achila, and a Gemara we have in Bava Kama, which tells us that achila al yedei atchak is yes regarded as a ma'isa achila, ma'isa of eating. Says Tosfos, there are two different contexts. The Gemara in Bava Kama is discussing halachas of damaging, of damage, of nizakin, and the Gemara tells us that we don't regard it as a mishuna, something abnormal, something to be regarded as an act of damage when the animal eats something out of necessity. We regard it as a ma'isa achila, and this has halachic ramifications in the Gemara of Bava Kama. So we don't regard it as something of a mazik. He's eating, even though it's not something which is really favored on him. It's not something which he enjoys. It's achila de'atchak, something out of necessity. Nevertheless, we regard it as an achila and not as a mishuna, something strange and abnormal, to the extent that we regard it as a mazik. This is different from our Gemara, where according to Rabbi Yechanan, achila al de'atchak lo yishma achila simply means that we can't determine the measure, the shear required for this type of feed based on an unideal, a less than ideal achila, something which is being fed out of necessity, does not present the criterion here, does not determine the shear, the measure required of this feed, rather we follow the shear required in ideal situations, which is really the shear of the gomel, since it's really meant to be used as camel feed. Continues the Gemara. Omer kimeloipi tola. Mishnah told us that the shear of omer, which is unprocessed straw, follows the amount, the maloi, the filling of a pli tola, the mouthful of a lamp. Says the Gemara, va'atanya kugageres. We have a brayso which gives us a different shear. What is the proper shear? A gregaris, amount of a dried fig. Says the Gemara, you write idi v'idi chad shiruhu. The mouthful of a tle of a lamb exactly corresponds to the shear of a gregaris of a dried fig. Continues the Gemara, ali shum v'ali b'tzolim. The olam, the leaves of shum of garlic, so garlic leaves, v'ali b'tzolim, onion leaves, the lachem, if they're moist, they're fresh, they're suitable for human consumption, gregaris. Then the shear is a gregaris, a dried fig, v'yivashim, if they're dried up and they're meant for animal feed, kimloi plagdi, the mouthful of a goat. Ve'ein mitzarfen zemzeh. The Mishnah told us we cannot combine items since they have different shiurim. They're not aligned in their measures. Amar Beis Rechanin, you meant to know as follows: Ein mitzarfen l'chamer shebehen. We cannot combine l'chamer shebehen, meaning we have different shiurim, we have different items, objects in our Mishnah. Some of them are more stringent, they're items of higher value. Some of them are of lower value. Which ones are the ones that are chamer, that have higher value? It's very simple, the ones that require less. The ones that have a smaller shear, evidently they're more significant, they're more chashiv, they're more chamer, they're of higher value. So something of lower value, something which requires more to be regarded as chashiv. For instance, if we compare the tevin, which requires the mouthful of a para, that's a smaller shear, that's more chamer. Obviously, it's of higher value than the atzah, which needs more to be considered chashav. It needs the amount complete, a pi gomel, the mouthful of a gomel, which is larger, which is greater. So the tevin is more chashav, is more chamer, in contrast with the atzah, which requires more in order to be chashiv. So the Gemara tells us that when do we employ this klal, that we don't combine two things. That's only one way. You don't take the item of lesser value, which requires more to complete its shear. We don't take that in order to complete the object of higher value, because this one is less chashiv, this one is lesser in value. So you can't compare, you can't combine the kal, the more lenient, the lesser in value, into the chamer, into the item of higher value. But in the reverse, you can do it. You can take something of higher value and use it to complete the shear of the object of lower value. So the tevin, which is higher value, can be used to be mashlim, to combine the shear of the atzah, which is lower in value. You cannot take the item which is more kal, more lenient, lesser in value, and apply it, mitzaref, combine it to the chamer, to the item which is higher in value and is more chamer. But you can do it in the reverse. You can take something which is more chamer and use it to complete the shear of the chayfetz, which is more kal. Continues the Gemara. Is that so? That you can take a chamer, something which is higher in value, and use it to combine, to complete the shear of something which is more kal, even though they're so different, they're so varied in their shiurim. Each one has its own unique, distinct shear. Again, things which are not aligned in their shiurim. Can you suggest that they can combine with each other? Haven't we learned in the Mishnah? Beged gimel al gimel. In order for a beged to be makabel tumas midras is where the zav, who's an avatum, had in the Mishnah, is an avatum, even if he doesn't touch, he just simply sits on this beged without actually coming into contact with it. This beged becomes tumas midras, which is an avatum, a very stringent form of tumah. Now, how large must this material be to be considered suitable for sitting on It needs to be at least 3 tefachim wide by 3 tefachim long. Gimel al gimel. V'hasak, sackcloth made of goat's hair, that needs more. That's something which is more coarse. It needs to be bigger, larger in size. V'hasak daled al daled. It needs to be 4 by 4 tefachim. V'oyer, leather, hey al hey, 5 tefachim by 5 tefachim. Mapats, a mat. Vav al vav. It needs to have more. It needs to be 6 by 6 tefachim. In order for it to have a significance, chashivus, to be suitable for this function, it needs to be larger. So we have going up the ladder from beged, up to sak, up to oir, up to mapats. So the most stringent one, the highest in value, of course, is the beged. Then it goes down a step to the sak, which is lesser in value, the oir, and finally the mapats. Now, can two of these items be combined with each other? Let's say there's not enough of the beged. You only have a 2 by 2 tefachim, and you want to add some of the sak. Or in the reverse, there's not sufficient of the sak. He wants to complete it using some of the beged. Continues the Gemara. V'tani Allah, and we learnt a brisa which expounds on this halacha. Ha beged v'hasak. If it wants to combine some beged into the sak, so the sak which is lesser in value, which is lower in significance than the beged, it needs more for it to be considered suitable for tumah. It needs to be 4 by 4. So if he's missing a little piece of the sak, he wants to complete the shear of the sak by attaching some of beged, some of the material to it. Or alternatively, hasak ve'or. If he wants to combine these two materials, sak and or, if he has a piece of leather which is meant to be 5 tefachim by 5 tefachim and does not have the prescribed amount, so he would like to add some of sackcloth to the to join it with the leather, to complete the shear of the to complete the shear of 5 tefachim by 5 tefachim. Or ha'or v'hamapatz. He wants to join a little bit of the of the leather to complete the shear of the mat. So, as Taisus points out, it's only going to work in this sequence: beged with sak with because these things are very similar to each other. You can't take a beged to complete the shear of a mapatz. So it works exactly as the Brisa told us: beged to complete a little bit of the sak with it, which is really the next step. Sak can be used to complete the shear of oir, which is its next level. Or alternatively, oir can be used to be mashed in the shear of a mapatz. The Brisa tells us, yes, mitzdarfen zemzeh, they can combine and join with each other. So you can take the item of lesser value and use it to complete to be mashlim the item, just the opposite. You can take an item of higher value, for instance, the beged, which is deemed more significant than the sak, and use it to be mashlim the shear of the sak. Why? How could he do that? What relation do these things have with each other? As Rashi explains, we find a halacha that indeed we combine two types of materials together. For instance, if he takes a little bit of beged and a little bit of sak and fashions it for a patch, to be used as a patch for the mardah shel chamar, the saddle on the donkey. In this case, we regard it as something suitable to be mekabel tumas medras. Why? Because Rashi says a person is not so particular when it comes to the patches on his saddle, and therefore he won't hesitate to combine a piece of material together with a piece of sack. And since we find a use for this, we find a scenario situation where indeed they're both serving together in the same function. So we find a common denominator between the beged and the sak. Alternatively, between the sak and the oir, between the and the mapatz, we find a situation where indeed they could perform a joint task together, be used together as a patch on the saddle. So they have that common denominator, and therefore we apply that concept here as well. We can join them together. They have something in common, they relate to each other, and therefore we can use one type of material to be mashlim the other material, provided once again we're using something which is higher in value to complete the shear of something which is lower in value. Again, matam, what is the basis for this assertion that we can join together two materials? Since since they're suitable to become Tamei Moshav, to have the Tumah when the Zav sits on them. Again, as we said, according to Rashi's Pshat, that they can be used to join together as to be made into a patch for his saddle. Says the Gemara, it's only because of this reason that we joined them together. It's only based on that situation, that halacha of the patch, that we found something in common. They have a common denominator, and therefore, indeed, they can join with each other. It is only because they're suitable to become Tamei Moshav, to be used as a saddle, as a patch on the saddle. But other than that, if not for that time, not for that reason, we would never even consider, we would never fathom to join them together. So why in our case, in our Mishnah, does Rabbi Yosef Bar Chanina tell us that these various types of animal feet, for instance, can be joined together, provided he uses the item of higher value to be mashlim, the item of lower value? They have nothing in common. They're too distinct. There are various forms of animal feet. They have no connection or shaykhs to each other. They have nothing in common. Amar Rava, yes. Here too, here as well in our case, they have something in common. Hachanami. Chazil ledugma. Explains Rashi. First line on top says Rashi, Hachanami chazi biyachad. These various materials mentioned in our Mishnah are suitable to be used together. They join together to perform one function, one task. Chazi biyachad. How? Ledugma. To be used as a sample. Says Rashi, Mishi yeshli limkar. If one is a merchant and would like to sell these various items mentioned in our Mishnah, so what does he do to display his wares? Soiver mikulam. He piles up a little bit of each. He puts in front of his window laharis to display sheyesh limkar, that he has these things to sell. Sheyesh limkar mikulam. He has these various things to sell. Now he takes a little bit of the straw, a little bit of the other thing. He takes a little bit of each, and he displays it. But since they're just so little of each, they're going to be dispersed by the wind. So he goes and he lumps it together. He takes a little bit of the cow feed, of the camel feed, of the goat feed, and lumps it together into one little bunch. He'd like them to be bunched together. The idea is zush we call chad v'chad, since each one is so little. The wind will simply disperse them. So since the wind, the mefazrasa, will disperse it, each one will be dispersed by the wind, he needs to join them together as a bunch. And here we find a situation where indeed all these different types of feed come together, are joined together, they have a common denominator to be used together as a sample for the merchant. Says the Gemara, once we found something in common, they have a common denominator, that is the basis for the halacha of tziruf as well. Now they relate to each other, and indeed we can be metzaref one to the other. We can take the item of higher value, use it to complete the shear of the object of lower value. So in summary, we learned a Mishnah, which gave us a list of various chafetzim, various items, and the shiurim pertaining to each one. And as the Gemara concluded, all these things, even though they have different types of shiurim, they can be mitzaref, one can join them, mitzaref and zelazeh, as long as he uses the chomer, the item of higher value, and completes with it the shear of the kal, of the item of lower value. The Mishnah gave us the shear of atza, which is the largest shear, the mouthful of a gomel, of a camel, teve, the processed straw, the mouthful of a para, of a cow, omer, which is a straw of the beans, the mouthful of a tle, of a lamb, and asamim, grasses to fill the mouth of a goat. What about oli shum and oli bitzalim, garlic leaves or onion leaves? Well, it depends. If it's suitable for human consumption, is lachim, they're fresh, then we follow the shear of machal adam, which is gergeris, as we will see in the upcoming Mishnah. When they are already dried and meant for animal feed, then we follow the shear of a mouthful of a gedi. The Gemara discussed two situations, two halachic quandaries. Firstly, the Gemara told us about a case where a person will carry straw, the unprocessed straw, which is meant for a para, for a cow, and he has the right amount necessary for the para, the maloi pi para, the mouthful of a cow, but this fellow intends on feeding it to his camel, which really needs more. The Gemara concluded that he's chayiv. It doesn't change the game here. It doesn't change the shear, since this is considered to be primarily cow feed, and there's the right shear for the cow. Just because he intends on feeding it to the gumel, which requires more, it doesn't exempt it. What about in the reverse? It takes camel feed, atza, which is meant for a gumel, not really meant to be fed to a cow, but he, out of necessity, feeds it to his para, and he only has the amount necessary sufficient for the para, the mouthful of a cow. In this case, we have a machlokes. Rechan says he's pater, because it's not enough here to feed to the camel. Just because he intends on feeding it to his cow, we employ the halacha of achila al yedei atchak, feeding out of necessity, loishma achila. It's not regarded as a proper feeding, and therefore it doesn't change the halacha. Until he has the right amount for the proper feeding of the camel, he's pater. Rish Lakish says he's chayiv, since ultimately he's feeding it to the para, it is achila, and therefore, if there's enough there, sufficient to be used for the para, he is chayiv. Continues the Mishnah. Hamoitzi oichlem mikra gegeres. If one should carry out oichlem, ordinary foodstuffs, meant for machal adam, for human consumption, what is the shear of chashivas? The shear of a gergeres that equals a dried fig. So one who is moitzi oichlem gegeres, he is chayiv. In this case, all agree that there's no problem joining together different forms of foodstuffs to complete the shear of gergeres. Because they're all aligned and alike in their measure. All the oichlei adam they're all equal. They all have this thing in common. They're all shavim. They're aligned in their amounts and their shiurim, which is the shear gergeres. Continues the Mishnah. When we speak about the oichel, which amounts the volume of a gergeres, what are we meant to include in the shear? Chutz miklipasan v'garineim. We don't include into the shear klipasan, the peels, v'garineim, and their pits, v'oiktsein, their stems, which are not edible, v'suban, the coarse bran, umursanan, the finer bran. So these are not included in the measure in the shear of gergeres, not regarded as eichel. Rabbi Yehuda Eimer, I agree with those, but there's actually one type of skin which is meant to be included into the shear because it is edible. Chutz mi klipe adoshim, except for the klipe adoshim, the skins of lentils, shemis bashle siman, which are cooked together with the lentils and are regarded as part of the oichel, as part of the food, and they are included in the shear. Says the Gemara, v'suban u'mursanan loy. You maintain that suban and mursan, which is the coarse and fine bran of the grains, do not get included in the shear. Loy mitzdarfen, they're not included. V'atanan, haven't we learned in the Mishnah with regards to shear challah, the amount of dough required to present a chiyuv, an obligation of mitzvahs challah, to remove a portion of the dough to give it to the kohen. So how much flour is required to make the right amount of dough that the mitzvah challah applies to? We know that the shear here is based on the shiur, the amount of the isas hamidbar, the dough that they would make in the midbar from the iman. So it has the same shear. And what exactly is that shear? V'atanan, we learned in the Mishnah, chameishes ruvaim kemach, 5 quarters of a kav of flour, v'oid, and a bit more. So if one was to make a dough out of this amount of flour, chayav b'chala, they're chayav in chala. Hein, so we include the flour itself, v'suvan, and it's their coarse bran, umursanan, and their finer bran. So you see here that everything is included in the shear. So how can you tell me that the bran is not included? V'atanan, haven't we learned in the Mishnah when it comes to challah, we include everything in the shear? Amar Abaye, there's a difference here. When it comes to challah, indeed we're meant to include them. Why? Shekein ani, because a poor man, oichal pitay, he will eat his bread using dough, which was made with flour that contained the brands. Oichal pitay beisa belusa, he eats his bread beisa, with a dough belusa mixed in with all these brands. He's not particular about it, and therefore we say that it's considered to be part of the dough. As Rashi says, it's called lechem haaretz, is the term the Torah uses when it comes to making the bread. Lechem haaretz, it's regarded as lechem, and therefore it also can be included in the measure and the amount of the shir challah. What about by Shabbos? Why when it comes to Shir Haitzah of Shabbos, do we say we want to include the brands? Explains Rashi, there's a difference. When it comes to the Shir of Challah, it's all included in Lechem Haaretz. Since the Ani would eat it together, we regard it as part of the dough. But when it comes to Shabbos, here we're trying to determine whether it has chashivas, it has significance. In order for it to be chayiv on a chayfetz, when it comes to be moitzi, to carrying it out from one rishus to the other, we need chashivas here. We need midi de chashav be'inan, says Rashi. Something of significance. These brands are not significant enough. They're not chashiv. Therefore, one cannot be chayiv on haitzah. If he factors the brands into the shir needs to be an addition to the subin and to the mursan, because they're not chashiv, and therefore there's no chiv on haitzah on Shabbos. So even though a person perhaps will eat it together, he won't care to separate it. He'll include it in his dough. So it's part of the dough, it's part of the bread. But in itself has no chashivas. It in itself is not significant, and therefore there's no chiv of haitzah. We can't factor it into the shir. Continues the Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda responds to the Tanakama, who excludes from the shir of gergeres the skins, the peels, the pits, the stems. Says Rabbi Yehuda, there's one exception here. Chutz miklipi adoshim, except for the skins of the lentils, hamaspashlo siman, which are cooked together with the lentils and considered to be edible and part of the lentils. Says the Gemara, adoshim in. Rabbi Yehuda only maintains that lentil skins are included, but pulin loy, but other types of beans not. A bean, specific bean called pul, is not included. Not only do we include the skins of the adoshim, but also the skins of this pul bean. Says more like kash. It's not difficult. It depends what type of pul. When they're fresh, then indeed we include the skins. But once they're already older, they're not included in the shir. Why are the old pulin considered to be different? Amar Avo, you know why? Because when they age, the skins blacken, and in that case, he doesn't want to keep his skins on the beans because they appear they appear like flies in his plate, and therefore it is ordinary practice for one to remove the skins of the older pulin, of the pulin atiki, and therefore, certainly in that case, they cannot be included in the shir of gergeres. So in summary, we learned halach in the Mishnah that if one carries out oichlin, foodstuffs, oichel ada meant for human consumption, what is the shir of chashiva? Is the shir which equals the amount of a gergeres, of a dried fig. The Mishnah told us all types of oichlin are mitzdaref with each other because they have the same shir. We're not meant to include the klipos, the skins, the shells, the peels, the garinim, the pits, the stems, and various forms of bran, the coarse bran or the finer bran. The Tanakama maintains that even adoshim or pulin are the same as the other types of foodstuffs, and the skins are not included. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the klipi adoshim, which are cooked together with the adoshim, are considered to be part of the lentils and are mitzdaref. What about pulin? What are the skins of this bean called pul? Well, it depends. If it's a fresh pul, and yes, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the skins are included. If they're older, in that case, even Rabbi Yehuda agrees, they're not meant to be included in the shir. Hadran Allah klal gadol. Continues the Mishnah, hamoitzi yain. If one carries out wine into Shirabim, what is the shir? Kedei mezigas hakois. The amount that is needed to dilute a kois. Now the Gemara will explain exactly what the term kois is referring to. And in those days they had this very strong, sharp wine. So they would dilute their wine prior to drinking. So he needs to carry the amount of pure wine needed to dilute and to come up with a full kais. So he doesn't need to take out a full kais of wine, a full measure, a filling of a cup of pure wine. He needs to take out just a small measure of the pure wine, the concentrated wine, which is sufficient when diluted to produce a wine of the amount of a kais. So again, hamoitzi yayin, if one carries out wine, how much pure wine does he need? Kedei mezigas hakois, as much as is necessary to dilute into a kois. Chalav, what is the share of milk? Kedei gemia, the amount of a swallow. Devash, honey, kedei litan ala kosis, to place on the a sore, on top of the backs of animals, so they would place a little honey there. So the honey follows that shear, as much as needed for that. Shemen, how much oil they losuch aver cotton, enough to anoint. A small aver, the Gemara will explain exactly what this means. Mayim, amount of water they loshav b'em sakila, to rub and to dilute into the keeler, some type of potion they would put on the eye. Ushar kala mashkim revi'is, all other liquids follow the shear of revi'is. A revi'is halug, Rashi says, beitzo mechza, the measure of 1.5 eggs, revi'is halug. All types of wastewater is also following the shear revi'is. Rab Shimon Omer kulam b'revi'is. Actually, all types of liquids have a shear revi'is, even the wine, honey. Rashi says, honey or milk. So all types of liquids follow the amount, the shear revi'is. So why then does the Mishnah give us these various shiurim, yayin, kedei mezigas hakois, chalav, kedei gmiya, etc.? Says Reb Shimon, v'lo yinemru kol hashiurim halalu. You know why the Mishnah gives us all these amounts, all these shiurim? All these shiurim were only said, ela only lematzni ein, to those who care for them, those who store them. Let me say it like this, that an ordinary person is only chayiv if the liquid amounts a shear revi'is. But for a particular person, a specific fellow who cares for less than that, he took a little bit of the chalav and stored it. He cared for it. He attributes significance to it. In that case, he's chayiv, if he has the right amount prescribed in our Mishnah. Now, as Tosfos points out, this halacha of Reb Shimon only pertains to an Adam Asher, a wealthy man. Shimon holds that an Adam Asher, to him, these small amounts described in our Mishnah are not deemed sufficient to have chashivas. And therefore, according to Reb Shimon, Adam Asher needs more, needs a revi'is of these various liquids to be chayiv, unless he specifically stored a smaller amount. L'matzni ein. If he went ahead and stored it, then he attributed special significance to it. In that case, he'll be chayiv, even the smaller amounts described in our Mishnah. So once again, according to Reb Shimon, an ordinary person follows the shiurim prescribed in our Mishnah. A wealthy man will have his own guidelines. He needs a revi'is unless he specifically stores a smaller amount. According to the Anakama, it's irrelevant what type of person. These halachas, these shiurim mentioned in our Mishnah apply to all equally. Continues the Gemara Tana, we learned in the Brisa. There's a Tosefta which explains the wording in our Mishnah, the opening wording in our Mishnah. How much pure wine, the amount needed to dilute with it a kois. What type of kois are we speaking about? Tana, we learned in the Brisa. Kedei mezigas kois yafe, sufficient wine to dilute with it a kois yafe. My kois yafe, what does this mean? Kois shel bracha. This is referring to the kois of brachas hamazon, as Rashi brings the Gemara brachas, where the Chacham instructed us to beautify it with various forms of beautification. And this is the kois mentioned in our Mishnah. He needs enough pure wine that when he finishes diluting the wine, he will have sufficient for the kois shel bracha. Omar Rav Nachman, Omar Rabba Ravo. Koishel bracha, you must know that for the koishel bracha, tzorich sheyehei a roiva revi'is. Now the koishel bracha was the koishel brachas hamazon, which needs an amount of a revi'is halug, a quarter of a lug. Now how much of that needs to be pure wine? So the practice apparently was to use 25% pure wine with 75% water added. Says Rav Nachman, in the name of Rabbi Ravor. So how much wine, how much pure wine is needed to complete the revi'is halug after diluting? We need a quarter of that. So the entire case was a revi'is halug, a quarter of a lug. So a quarter of that is a roiva of a revi'is halug, a quarter of a lug. Koshel brachat tzarech sheyehei needs to have pure wine, the amount of roiva revi'is, a quarter of a quarter, kadeshim zegenu v'yam dal revi'is, so that when he finishes diluting it, it will total the amount of revi'is halug. The Gemara will proceed, explain to us how this halacha pertains to our Mishnah. Okay, time for a brief chazara of today's daf. The Mishnah listed for us various animal feed and their respective shiurim. And the Gemara told us that these things are mitzdaref, one with the other. They can join and combine to complete a shear, provided he uses the item which is more chomer, which is higher in value, and uses it to be mashlim, to complete the shear of the item which is lesser in value. The Mishnah told us about the shear of atzah, which is the bean straw used for a gumel for camel field. In that case, you need the mouthful of a camel to be considered to be chashav for its teven, the processed hay, that requires the mouthful of a parah, of a cow. Amer, which is unprocessed straw, the mouthful of a tala, of a lamb. Grass, the amount of a gdiya, of the mouthful of a goat. The garlic leaves or the onion leaves. Well, it depends if it's suitable for human consumption. They are lachem, they're fresh. In which case we follow the shear of machal adam, which is gergeris, dried fig. If there are dried leaves, then we follow the shear of animal feed. We require the mouthful of a goat. The Gemara gave us two situations where we have a shaila. If one would carry the teven, which is meant to be fed to a parah, to a cow, and he carries the right amount, the meloi pi parah, a mouthful of a cow, but he intends on using it for a gomel, for a camel, which requires more. All will agree that he's chayiv because it has sufficient amount for the parah. What about in the reverse? He takes camel feed, the atzah, which is meant ideally to be used for a camel, and he decides to use it for the parah, for the cow, and he has the right amount. The meloi pi parah, a mouthful of a cow. In which case we have a machlokes. Reichan says he's pater. We don't follow the shear of a parah. It's achila al de'at chak. It's eating out of necessity. It's not really ideally meant for a cow. Therefore, we follow the shear of a camel. In which case he's pater because he doesn't have enough. According to Shlakish, since he intends on using it for a parah, even though it's achila de'at chak, we consider it to be shmo achila, and therefore that determines the amount and the shear of a pipara is sufficient to be mechayiv. The Gemara told us that these shiurim are mitzaref one with the other. Again, once we use the chomer to mitzaref to the kal, the Gemara told us they have something in common. All these types of animal feed have something in common, since one a salesman, one who tries to display it in front of his store, will lump them together. We'll take a bit of each and lump them together. If so, we find that they have a joint task, a joint function. They have something in common, and therefore, that is the ground and the basis of the halacha, that these types of items can indeed join with each other to complete the shear. The Mishnah told us the shear of oichlim, of foodstuffs pertaining to humans, machal adam. What is the shear of those oichlim for a shear, for a chiv haitzah? We need the amount equal to a gergeres, a dried fig. The Mishnah told us that only the food part of it, the food portion, can be regarded as the shear, but we want to exclude the peels, the shells, the skins, the different parts of the food which are not edible. Rabbi Yehuda maintains that the klipe adoshim, the skins of the lentils, are mitzdaref, and the Gemara told us that even the klipe pulin are mitzdaref, provided that they're fresh. We concluded with the Mishnah gave us various shiurim of different types of liquids, yayin, cholav, dvash, shemen, mayim. And the Mishnah told us that other liquids follow the amount of a revi'is. The Gemara told us, what is a shear of wine, of pure wine, enough to dilute it into a kaishal bracha, the kaishal brachas hamazon, which requires a revi'is halug. And according to this calculation, how much wine is needed for Yitzhak Shabbos? A quarter of that. So the shear of yayin kedei mizigas hagoyis mentioned our Mishnah is referring to the amount of pure wine, which equals a quarter of a revi'is halug. So at the end of the diluting process, it will total a revi'is halug, the shear of a kais shel bracha.